our waiting time. We have Dr. Mendoza back with us, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, to talk about the Chinese delegation that's just been banned from attending the Queen's lying in state. Hello, Doctor. You can hear me now, I hear.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can also see you, which is quite miraculous. I can both see and hear you, which is excellent. What about the diplomatic consequences of saying you cannot attend the lying in state, but you are expected, we believe, to attend the funeral? It seems a bit confusing.
Well, I think this relates obviously to the fact that the Chinese government has, of course, sanctioned various of our parliamentarians for doing nothing more than calling them to account for their human rights abuses in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs and other places. So in a sense, you can't allow a country that sanctions your parliamentarians for doing their job onto parliamentary property. And that's why I think it's less controversial than it looks at first once you understand what the Chinese have done, which is the controversial activity.
Right. So just explain to people the implications of what the Chinese have done.
Well, what it, of course, essentially means is that various British politicians, people like Ian Duncan Smith, are sanctioned by China. And were they to go to China, they would be no doubt arrested. If they had property in China, it would be taken from them, so on and so forth. They are being treated in the same way, illegitimately, of course, in the same way that we are rightly treating people like Vladimir Putin's regime for its war crimes in Ukraine. So the issue here really is why the Chinese government has struck out at our parliamentarians, and that is a controversial element here, not the fact that they are being banned from parliamentary estate.
Talk us through those states and those officials who have received invitations to the funeral and those who have not.
Well, the main country that is not is, of course, Russia. And that is significant, hugely significant. I mean, the very fact that you have countries various rogue nations like Iran and North Korea have had their ambassadors invited, but the Russians have been put right out into the cold. I think it's only 3 countries that haven't actually been invited. This tells you a real message. I mean, Vladimir Putin wants to see himself as king of the world, and he has been relegated to the fringes, the ice-cold fringes of global diplomacy for this most incredible gathering of world leaders, and he won't be there.
Do we then imagine that the funeral will be barred or banned from all Russian media, and that Russian citizens won't even be aware that it's going on because they won't be able to see it? Because otherwise, if they do know that it's happening and that Vladimir Putin, their leader, isn't there, then there will be repercussions, won't there?
Well, Vanessa, it's a delicious irony you've just put forward because, of course, everyone knows the Queen has passed away and everyone knows the Queen's funeral is on Monday, including in Russia. And you're quite right. The question's going to be asked, if he's not there, well, why aren't you there? What's happened to our world standing? The fact that you can't even get invited to this, you're in the company of, the lowest of the low. What's happening? So my prediction would be that there'll be some spin in Russia because, of course, he controls all the PR. There'll be snapshots of it. Probably won't be the whole thing, obviously, shown. They may even pretend he somehow was there, or alternatively that he had to turn down the invitation because he's busy with matters of state.
And the other countries not invited, Belarus, Myanmar, is that right?
That's correct. That's your trio of the worst of the worst.
And as you say, ambassadors from other countries not in favour or considered to be hostile or considered to be questionable in the way they conduct their affairs have been invited. So who gets to draw the line or make the decision or have the red pen?
Well, it's ultimately the Foreign Office who decides these things. It's obviously not the palace itself. As with everything, and here's an important thing to note, the Queen was our greatest diplomat. She was the number one person you would send out onto the world stage, but she was only ever acting on behalf of the Foreign Office or the British government in that sense. So the British government makes the decisions in this regard. They're the ones who've decided who should and who shouldn't come, but also the level. For example, nobody has invited the Iranian Supreme Leader because that would be an outrage for him to be here. But, they've gone for a lower level, equally with King Jong-il. That's not going to happen. So it's about levels as well. You want your allies represented. You want those who you wish to maintain some relationship with at a lower level. And, of course, those who are completely frozen out, not even a general member of the public will attend.
And is there ever a danger of some kind of retaliation, I suppose, primarily diplomatic, as a result of having a metaphorical slap in the face, i.e. not being invited to the funeral? Are there possible repercussions? In other words, is there very careful treading behind the scenes in making a decision to exclude a nation?
Yes, because, of course, at that point, what you're saying is we don't want to have anything to do with you. Now, we know that even rogue nations around the world, we may have to do something with them, even if it is aimed to negotiate with them over something. I mean, nobody wants the North Koreans or Iranians at a party, but you know that you may well have to talk to them at some point about various issues. So this is a strong message. The message you set by excluding them, you're saying basically there is no progress here at all and no future for you at our diplomatic table until you change.
And then royalty, foreign royalty, that's a whole different ball game. That's a different kind of avenue, isn't it? Because they might be invited because they're family, they might be invited because they're friends, they might be invited in a different manner from government representatives.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, obviously, many of the monarchs are heads of state, so you're getting a head of state level invitation at that point. It's obviously possible that a political leader will also come along as well. But you're quite right. I mean, some of this is a family thing, some of this is a kind of crowned heads of Europe thing, and some of it is simply fellow royals. The Japanese emperor is coming, of course, and that's because he had a particularly close relationship with the Queen. So that's the reason why some others are coming as well.
And the discredited former King of Spain, no longer King of Spain, he's coming, and he's a good old pal of the families and a relative and stuff. I mean, you don't get to tell your relatives they can't come to your wedding, do you?
Well, you've got that, yes, you've got that, but also he's causing problems for his own son by coming, who will also be in attendance. And as you know, Juan Carlos is not exactly regarded positively in France today.
No, exactly. So in
Spain,
no. And so, I mean, as we watch the funeral, there'll be all manner of drama playing out behind the scenes that we may not necessarily be aware of, won't there?
Oh, of course. And here's a key thing. There are numerous background conversations that are going to happen along the way. And so part of this is what you see publicly, but those whispered chats and also what happens at the diplomatic meetings before and afterwards, that's where the real business gets transacted.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us about it. Enormously appreciated. That is Alan Mendoza there, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society.